Hey everybody, I'm Burris. Today I'm going to be building a modern take on the traditional doghouse, but I'm also going to be adding some additional features that are sure to make the neighborhood dogs jealous. So if you guys are ready, let's go. In this video, I'll show you how to easily construct this modern and functional design using some plywood, framing lumber, deck screws, and a few other finishing elements. No need to get out the pen and paper just yet because we've got a full list of materials, tools, and instructions in the description below, so let's get started. I'm going to begin by framing the base, the sidewalls, and the roof. I'll finish out my base and then attach the sidewalls and the roof frame to create the main doghouse structure. Later on, I'll be adding plywood for siding. Measure twice, cut once. Now that I got the base pieces cut, I'm going to go grab my drill and fasten this together. So when you're measuring, if you're only off by 1/8 or so, it's not going to be perfect. That's totally fine. When you go to put the plywood on, then you can really kind of nudge it one way or another, and that plywood's really going to hold it down. All right, and that's it. The base is done. So we're going to be cutting some angles. If you've got a miter saw where you can set the angle, have it up against a fence and make a nice perfect cut, great. If you don't, a speed square is definitely what I'd recommend. It's inexpensive, it's quick, and this is framing, so it does not have to be perfect. You just got to be in the ballpark. Now, if you're going to cut all your framing pieces all at once, it might be best to go ahead and just label everything as you cut it. Otherwise, you're looking at a giant pile of 2x2s, and you're trying to figure out what's what, and you're having to remeasure everything. So just go ahead and mark it with a pencil. It's your framing, it won't be seen anyways. All right, now that we've got our framing all cut, we're gonna assemble it. So we're cutting and assembling 2x2s. They have a tendency to crack if you put a screw through the end. So I'm gonna drill some pilot holes, and we're gonna put this all together and put it on our base. All right. Number 2. All right, and there is the back. So with 2x2s, you can see it moves a little bit right now. Once we put all 4 walls together, it's really gonna sturdy it up. If you were building it with 2x4s, it'd be a little stiffer, but for a doghouse, this is perfect. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and assemble our walls on the base. Now, if you're working by yourself, you might think it's easy just to hold 2 walls together and try and screw them together. You might be able to do that. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna mark where this back wall goes and screw it into my base first. That way it's like I've got an extra set of hands holding that wall while I screw on the sides and then my front. Let's put the left side on. So we got 3 sides up. Last one is front. All right, so you can modify the door area if you need to, if you have a taller dog. And I made it approximately 2 to 4 inches wider than her shoulder blade so she can go in and out. Obviously, if your dog's a different size, you can customize it accordingly. All right, so we've got our front built. Starting to look like a doghouse now. Now this is gonna hang off the front about 12 inches. It's gonna be flush with the back. So if you come around to the back and you look at the edge, obviously we didn't cut this at an angle, and this is going straight up, this is kind of going back. So do yourself a favor and just move this forward just a little bit so that this top edge is flush here. That way you don't have this top kicking your plywood panel out this way. All right, so we're gonna measure and we're gonna cut all our walls. We're gonna do our sides and then our roof. All right, we're gonna measure and cut the front, and we're gonna go ahead and just cut it and lay it up there, see how it fits, and then we'll mark our opening for the door. Another quick thing to think about, the grain is running vertical. I made sure that all the other sides the grain is also running vertical because this is what my finished wall is gonna look like. So I thought having them all running the same way would work out nicely. So line it up side to side, grab a pencil, and just kind of get inside there and mark your door. All right, that'll do it. We got our walls. Now let's go put on the roof. All right, so I'm getting ready to cut the plywood for the roof. Our width and our length, we're gonna add 3/4 of an inch to each side. So both sides, add 3/4 of an inch to the front and the back. That way we have room for our trim and we can put our drip cap right over top of that. Beautiful. The last thing we're gonna do before we wrap for the day is go ahead and cut all of our trim pieces. That way we can get them painted and we can stain the doghouse. Left. All right, it's a new day. Our paint and our stain is cured. So we're gonna finish this thing off by putting our drip edge, our shingles, and our trim on. So let's get started. Here we go, drip edge is on. So in my 9 to 5, I don't typically do a lot of roofing, so I'm not sure how other roofers do it, but when you measure your pieces for the end to cut them, just flip them over, score them with a knife, fold them until they break. Make sure not to cut through to cut your tar paper. All right, the roof's done. It's time to do the trim. I'm gonna put this on with brad nails, but I'm also gonna use some construction adhesive. If you want, you can even use a little bit of silicone right behind here to kind of waterproof these seams. So while we're building this, we wanna make sure there's nothing sharp poking through so that when our pet's inside, they're not gonna get cut or anything. So we're making sure that our finish nails, our screws, our regular roof nails, everything is just long enough to go into the lumber, but not so long that it goes through the lumber. I think Luna likes her new doghouse, but if you want to take this modern design to the next level, I've got a few ideas that I want to try out. So one of the first ideas I had is to cut this wall open, hinge it at the top, so it folds out, creates a little bit of shade, maybe a little bit of airflow. I think Luna's really going to like it. There we go. So I've got my rough door cut out. I had to put in a little bit of extra framing at the top for this hinge, but the hinge should cover up all these screws nicely. So to be able to get the door to shut nicely, I took off this piece of framing, popped my trim back on, and voila, there it goes. Nice and easy. And just like that, our doghouse has a side door. Now we could stop there, but I've got one more idea that you might like. All right, so for this last modification, we're gonna build a ramp so Luna can get up on the roof. We're gonna tear off this asphalt shingle and put down some artificial grass so she can do some sunbathing. All right, so I took the roof off down to the felt paper. I'm gonna build a border around it to hide the edges of this artificial grass. All right, so I'm cutting out the ramp with 1/2 inch ply, which is what we built our doghouse out of. That way when we stain, it'll match. On the inside, however, you really won't see the ply, so I'm using a 3/4 inch to provide more structural integrity. So for the outside face of the ramp, you could try just screwing your panels in all from the outside, but if you want to hide your screws, try using something like a pocket hole jig. It's inexpensive, it's easy to use, and it keeps all those screws hidden. So you don't have to do this. I used the pocket holes on the 3/4 inch. On this 1/2 inch stuff, I went ahead and threw in some little stringers and some brad nails just to make it a little stronger. I'm gonna do a quick weight test. All right, so I think it's passing the weight test. I'm gonna build a few spacers so it ties in nicely to the doghouse, and then we'll put our grass on. So you don't have to permanently attach your ramp. I'm going to. My dog's a little bit bigger, so I'm gonna fill in these gaps, do a little painting, and permanently attach it to the doghouse. All right, the doghouse is done. There's just one last thing, and that's figuring out where am I gonna put this in my yard. think I know just the place. Looks like Luna's a big fan of her doghouse, and I have to admit, I am too. So get creative, get to work. Let us know how your doghouse turned out in the comments below. And remember, you can find all the materials, dimensions, and instructions in the description below. Thanks, and see you soon.